Oh, there's a ton of depth, and there's always depth at wide receiver. It's obviously just picking the right one that you feel good about. You know, if there's 2 or 3 guys you really like, and all of a sudden you see 4 or 5 receivers come off the board, you start to think, man, I really want to have this guy, so maybe I better draft him.
We have talked it out as a group, and we've made a promise. We promise not to ask you, who should the Niners pick in an hour? We promise.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't have any idea.
Yeah, I know. I know you do, but you don't. And if you know Greg Cosell, you get it. So all right. So let's throw some names at you though,
Sure.
and see what you think, because people are always sort of curious about a team's need versus what teams always say they want to do, which is best player available. I wonder if we start there with you. Do you have an opinion on that? Like, in your mind, your tape, who's the best football player on the board right now?
Well, that's a hard question for me to answer. But I
know.
think in response to your initial point about best player versus needs, I think as you start moving into round 2, I think what teams start to do is they start to pick the best player at a position that they need. So in other words, what number pick do the Niners have in this round?
33.
Yeah, they're starting it off.
First pick, and then they also have 58.
Okay, so 33. So they're starting it off. So they're at a point where they're going to pick a player, in my view, and we don't know who that's going to be, and you can throw some names out to me, and I'll certainly tell you what I think, because I probably watched 220 guys in detail. So they'll probably look for a player at a position of need. So in other words, let's say they have a position of need, and you can decide what you think that position is. Let's say that player's ranked 38th on their board. They would take him at 33. They would not take a player that they have ranked 51st at 33, because you can't do that. So that's the way I think teams start seeing things in the second round. You start drafting players that are right near your board, right where they are on the board, at positions of need.
And a guy who might be in this spot for them is Emmanuel McNeill Warren, who many people, including the Kalshi markets, I don't know if you engage in Kalshi if you do that, but it's kind of a pseudo betting thing. And right now he is the market favorite for the Niners. Tell me about Emmanuel McNeill Warren.
To me, I watched a lot of McNeill Warren. He's a fascinating player. I thought he may be the most physically gifted safety in the class. Doesn't mean he's the best right now. Obviously, 2 safeties went in the first round, Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman, who are better players overall right now. But McNeill Warren is 6'3.5", 201. Really, he's very athletic. He's got a rangy, easy feel to his movement, very fluid. He can play on the back end. He plays downhill in the run game with aggression and competitiveness. He's willing to get dirty and hit with force. He's very comfortable on the back end. He's very smooth. He's got a profile that you really like: size, length, physicality, play speed, range, versatility, competitiveness. He's a player I really liked on tape. Didn't know anything about him because of Toledo until this draft cycle. Watched a ton of him. Really liked his tape.
Okay, Greg, because I got this question yesterday from some Niner fans, but it sounds like that answer tells me you think McNeill Warren could play kind of either safety position. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe he could be interchangeable. And I also think depending on your coordinator and how he sees it, if you wanted to play big nickel with 3 safeties, he could be one of the 3.
Is that something that is in Raheem Morris's repertoire?
My sense is Raheem Morris has a lot in his repertoire and would play to what his talent is. So again, if they draft McNeill Warren and it turns out he's ready to play, don't forget they're still rookies. They're still players that need very often an adjustment to the league. But if they feel that they want to put Brown, Mustafa, and McNeill Warren out there because they're 3 of their better players, yes, I think they could do that.
Some turnover at wide receiver for the Niners with Ayuk likely gone, and Jawan Jennings won't be back. Denzel Boston is a player who could be there. Well, he is there at 33. What do you think of his tape and his potential fit in the Shanahan offense?
Yeah, I could be dead wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, guys. Believe me. I don't think that they would look at wide receiver as a position that they'd have to draft at 33. But again, I could be wrong. Denzel Boston is big. He's long. He's athletic, but not explosive. There's a difference with those two things. He's got vice grip hands. He's an interesting player because he's, like I said, they have now a boundary X if they want to do that with Mike Evans. So you're dealing, Boston is a big, long wide receiver. He's got a physical dimension to his game. He's got outstanding hands. He can make tough contested catches. You have to understand what he is if you draft him. He's almost 6'4". He's 212. He's not an explosive guy. He's not going to run by you, but he can catch everything. And, I liked his tape, but you have to know what he is.
Greg, I'm with you as far as the 33rd pick, but I'd be very surprised if we go to bed tomorrow night and the 49ers have not added to the wide receiver room. So how's depth at wide receiver going forward into tonight and tomorrow?
Oh, there's a ton of depth, and there's always depth at wide receiver. It's obviously just picking the right one that you feel good about, but there's a ton of depth. There's always 30-plus wide receivers taken in drafts. There's always wide receivers to be drafted. It's just a matter of how you see the board playing out. Will there be a run on wide receivers? You know how that works sometimes. If there's 2 or 3 guys you really like, and all of a sudden you see 4 or 5 receivers come off the board, you start to think, man, I really want to have this guy, so maybe I better draft him. So we'll see, but there's always receivers.
It's never sexy when they go offensive line, but it's clearly a position of need for the Niners. How do you like Chase Bisantis, the guard from Texas A&M?
I like Chase Bisantis. I was not surprised that Keelan Rutledge went in the first round. He was probably I guess Ione was everybody's favorite. I liked him too. But Keelan Rutledge, who went to the Texans in the first round, I really liked. Bisantis was close to him right there. He's a strong offensive guard prospect. I think he's got all the traits needed to be a quality starter. He's a strong and committed run blocker. He's got power. He's got movement. He could execute multiple blocking techniques and concepts. One of the things he did well was the backside cutoff block, which is a litmus test block for offensive guards in the run game. The one area that he needs to work on, I think it's probably technique-based more than he can't do it, is he just needs to anchor better in one-on-one pass protection. And remember one thing, guys, and this is an overriding point. The way the league is now structured defensively, there's more and more 5-man fronts for the defense, even in passing situations. So you know what's absolutely critical for offensive linemen now, not just for tackles, but even for interior offensive linemen, you have to be able to pass protect one-on-one on third down, because you do not want to have to keep someone in to help. And there's no way Kyle Shanahan wants to do that. So pass protection one-on-one for every offensive line position is becoming more and more important in this league.
How would you compare Bisantis to Emmanuel Pregan from Oregon as far as a guard that the Niners might look at in either one of their second-round picks?
Yeah, Pregan, to me, I'm not sure that he fits the Niners, because I think Pregan is a pure power player, and he's good at. He can drive people off the ball. I'm not sure that he's a great mover. I think he's a little stiffer than Bisantis. I think that he'd be a better player, or he'd be a player you'd want more if the foundation of your run game was more gap scheme with down blocks and those kinds of blocks. But if you want movement, which they do, I think that Bisantis, to me, again, I'm giving you, my evaluation of the tape. Maybe an O-line coach sees it differently, but based on my evaluation of the tape, I think Bisantis would fit the Niners more than Pregan.
Let's go to edge rusher, always a popular spot, no different for the Niners. Do either of these guys pop out to you as fits for the Niners? Zion Young of Missouri, Cassius Howell of Texas A&M.
They are so totally different players, it's not even a question. Zion Young is almost your prototypical 4-3 DN in a foundational 4-man front. He is not a true pass rusher. That doesn't mean he can never rush the quarterback, but he's really, he's a height, weight, frame, arm length, wingspan profile guy. He's not He's not a twitchy guy. He's not truly an edge rusher. He's a power player. His game is built on power, methodical power and hand placement. Whereas Cassius Howell, even including David Bailey, who went number 2 last night to the Jets, you could make the argument that Cassius Howell is the most explosive edge player in this draft. The big issue with him, and I don't have an answer for this because there isn't an answer, it depends on one's point of view, is his arms are extremely short. They're way shorter than you want for an edge rusher, but he is incredibly dynamic. He can bend. He's explosive. They're totally different players. So if you draft Howell, you're counting on him to be a true edge pass rusher. If you draft Young, you're almost looking for that strong foundational DN, can set the edge, can, maybe rush the quarterback here and there, but he's not truly a pass rusher.
Short arms, I'm out, Greg. That's going to be a deal breaker for me. I'm going to go ahead and have to move on to the next guy. And T.J. Parker's someone. It seems like there's a lot of edges who might be in the top of round 2. Is T.J. Parker someone who might fit?
Yeah, T.J. Parker, is Clemson. He had a great year 2 years ago in terms of numbers. This year, the entire Clemson team was not very good. I wouldn't call him sudden and explosive, but I thought that he had a pretty refined, nuanced feel to how to use his hands to break down the technique of offensive tackles and win both to the high side and to redirect underneath to the low side. He's very aggressive with his hands, really aggressive. And that's a good thing because you have to be able to use your hands to rush the quarterback in the NFL. He's got pretty good size. He's over 260 pounds. If you're talking about a player who can rush the quarterback, if that's what you're looking for, he's a better pass rusher now than Zion Young is.
Greg, I'd just love to get a reaction from you on this. I know sometimes you like to stray away from the big opinion stuff, but listen to this now. Charlie Campbell, who runs a draft site, got an anonymous quote from a director of player personnel in the AFC that yesterday after the draft said, quote, "I've been around a long time, and this was the bleepiest first round I've ever seen. Just about every player was drafted higher than where they would be in a normal year." What's your reaction to that quote?
I agree.
Okay. That's a big statement. So, do you think
I agree because
you think this is a bad draft?
Bad draft in terms of really high-level first-round players, yes. In a normal draft, guys, there's probably 15 to 18 players on that every team gives a first-round grade to. They might not all be the same players, but there'll be 15 to 18. It would not have surprised me in this draft if there were only 10 to 13 players that truly had first-round grades. But you know what? You have to draft. You have to draft someone. So every GM, when they draft someone, says that's the guy we wanted. You know how this works.
Right. But you don't have to draft someone. It sounds to me like you kind of support what the Niners did, which was get the hell out of the draft and just get more stuff.
I would agree with that, particularly later in the first round, because I think once you certainly – look, there's certain guys in this draft that would have been, real high picks regardless of the draft. But – when it's not a quarterback draft, guys get pushed up, like receivers, okay? And then because of the changing nature of the NFL game, a lot of receivers are volume targets. Jordan Tyson could certainly put up numbers. Mekhi Lemon could certainly put up numbers. But if you're just talking about the quality of the receiver in terms of traits, there was no one worthy of a top 10 pick in this draft. Now, that doesn't mean they won't be good players, okay? Now, Carnell Tate was my number 1. He went 4th to the Titans, and, it ends up being a good pick for them given the nature of this draft. But is Carnell Tate a top 10 pick? There's no Jamar Chase in this draft. There's nobody like that. There's no going back years like Julio Jones, A.J. Green. You don't have those guys in this draft, so everybody gets pushed up because it's not a quarterback draft.
Well, a quarterback went at number 13, and he went to the Rams, and that might have been the biggest shocker of the first round. Ty Simpson to the Rams to back up Stafford. What do you think of what you've seen from Ty Simpson?
Well, I'll just start by saying it probably wasn't a shocker to the Rams that he went at 13.
Because they liked him more than probably most of America.
Looked like it might have been a shock to Sean McVay, though.
Facts.
Yeah, well, we don't know that. But the point is that I love when people say things like that. Well, that's the first surprise of the draft. Well, it's not a surprise to the team that drafted him. But anyway, I like Ty Simpson. Now, again, he's only started 15 games. The things that he did well are definitely NFL-type things where you say that fits NFL quarterbacking. And by the way, I think the way in which he plays and the offense that Alabama ran very much is like the Rams offense, and I'm sure they know that. Obviously, they're, McVay is smarter than I am when it comes to that, so I'm sure they know that. Now, because he only started 15 games and there were ups and downs in his season, you're not 100% certain, which is, in a sense, the true Ty Simpson. But what he did well throughout the year definitely translates and projects well to the NFL.